May 27th, 1997. A tornado touches down near Jarrell, Texas. At first, it looks like a typical storm, a dark funnel forming beneath a rotating thunderstorm, dust swirling across ranchland, a narrow column of debris stretching toward the sky. But within minutes, meteorologists notice something strange. The tornado is not racing across the landscape. Most tornadoes move quickly, carried by their parent storms, 30 miles per hour, sometimes faster. This one is different. The circulation begins drifting slowly toward a small neighborhood named Double Creek Estates. Then the forward motion almost stops. The tornado widens, the debris cloud grows darker, and the storm begins grinding across the same patch of ground. For nearly 10 minutes, the circulation remains over the neighborhood. Homes are torn apart, vehicles lifted, entire structures ripped from their foundations. The winds inside the tornado intensify as it lingers. Instead of passing in seconds, the storm stays, rotating, grinding, destroying everything beneath it. Entire houses have vanished, not just destroyed, lifted, carried into the sky by one of the most violent tornadoes ever recorded. The atmosphere over central Texas on May 27th was unusual from the start. Most violent tornado outbreaks happen when strong winds in the upper atmosphere push storms rapidly across the landscape. But that afternoon, the steering winds were weak. A slow-moving cold front had drifted into Texas. Warm, humid air from the Gulf of Mexico was rising into the region. Temperatures climbed into the 90s. Moisture pooled near the surface. This created instability. But high above the ground, the winds that normally drive thunderstorms forward were barely moving. Meteorologists sometimes call this a weak steering flow. Storms can still form in this environment, but when they do, they move slowly, sometimes extremely slowly. By early afternoon, towering thunderheads began building across central Texas. The air was unstable enough for thunderstorms, but the atmosphere lacked a strong push that normally organizes large storm systems. Instead of forming a fast-moving line, individual storms began popping up one by one. The air was unstable enough for thunderstorms, but the atmosphere lacked the strong push that normally organizes large storm systems. Radar operators in the region watched the storms carefully. A few began showing signs of rotation. Small mesocyclones started developing within the cells, but the environment was still unusual, because the same weak steering winds that slowed the storms also meant something else. If a tornado formed, it might not travel quickly. It might linger. And that possibility made the developing storms more dangerous than they first appeared. Across Williamson County, dark clouds continued building higher into the sky. Lightning flashed inside the growing towers. Rain curtains formed beneath them. And beneath one of those storms, just west of Jarrell, the atmosphere was beginning to spin. Rotation was strengthening quietly. Within minutes, a wall cloud would begin lowering toward the ground. The storm was organizing, quietly, now. By mid-afternoon, storms across central Texas begin coming alive. Radar screens show scattered thunderstorms forming along the slow-moving front. Most are small at first, short bursts of rain, occasional lightning. But a few cells begin to rotate. Storm chasers driving along rural highways notice lowering cloud bases. Dark, circular formations hanging beneath the storms. Wall clouds. These are the early signs of tornado potential. Around 3:30 p.m., the first tornado warnings of the afternoon are issued across parts of central Texas. Several brief tornadoes touch down in open countryside. Thin funnels spin across fields. Dust devils grow into short-lived vortices before lifting again. For a while, the storms behave normally, but one cell west of Jarrell begins changing rapidly. Instead of drifting northeast like most Texas storms, this one drifts slowly, south. But one cell west of Jarrell begins changing rapidly. Inside the storm, the updraft strengthens. Rain wraps around the circulation. The rotating core tightens. A strong mesocyclone forms. Storm chasers parked along farm roads watch the base of the storm carefully. The cloud base lowers. Rotation tightens further. Dust begins swirling across ranch land beneath the storm. At first it looks small, just a patch of spinning dirt beneath the clouds. But the circulation grows. Debris begins lifting into the air. But the circulation grows. And unlike most tornadoes in Texas, this one is not racing across the plains. It is barely moving at all, which means everything beneath it will face the storm for far longer than usual. Around 4:40 p.m., the circulation near Jarrell begins transforming. The small spinning column of dust beneath the storm tightens rapidly. Air rushes inward along the ground. Warm inflow feeds the rotating updraft above. The tornado strengthens. Within minutes, the thin column widens into a growing cone. Debris rises higher into the storm. Fences, tree branches, and pieces of roofing begin spiraling upward. The tornado is no longer weak. It is intensifying. Storm chasers watching from nearby roads notice the change immediately. The base of the thunderstorm lowers. A rotating wall cloud forms above the circulation. The connection between cloud and ground becomes solid. A fully developed tornado now stands over the Texas countryside. But something about its movement still looks wrong. The storm drifts slowly south-southwest, opposite the direction most tornadoes travel. Meteorologists later described the motion as one of the strangest ever documented. The tornado is not being pushed by strong steering winds. It is being pulled by its own internal circulation. The result is terrifying. The storm lingers. The wedge continues widening. Dust and debris form a thick brown cloud beneath the rotating funnel. The tornado grows larger with every minute. Soon it stretches hundreds of yards across, then nearly half a mile. Farmhouses and ranch buildings in its path begin collapsing. Power poles snap. Livestock scatter across open pastures. And directly ahead of the slow-moving tornado lies a small residential community, Double Creek Estates, a quiet neighborhood of homes and mobile houses, sitting on open land outside Jarrell. But steadily, residents in Double Creek Estates watch the sky darken. Few realize how long the tornado will remain over their homes, because this storm is not passing, it is arriving. As the tornado approaches Double Creek Estates, its motion becomes even stranger. Most tornadoes move quickly because the thunderstorms that produce them are carried by strong winds high in the atmosphere. But the Jarrell storm has almost no steering flow. The entire supercell drifts slowly across the countryside, and the tornado beneath it slows even more. Witnesses watching from nearby roads later say the storm looked almost frozen in place. The dark, rotating clouds seemed to sit over the same ground minute after minute. Meteorologists studying radar that afternoon noticed the same thing. Normally, a violent tornado passes over a house in a few seconds. Walls collapse, roofs tear away, then the storm moves on. But when the Jarrell tornado reaches Double Creek Estates, it does not move on. It lingers. Then, the storm moves on. Debris lifted into the air is pulled back into the vortex. Boards, glass, metal, and insulation become deadly projectiles inside the rotating wind. Structures that might survive a brief strike now endure minutes of violent winds. Roofs are torn away, then the walls collapse, then the remaining frame of the house is ripped apart piece by piece. The tornado is not simply passing through the neighborhood. It is grinding it down. Vehicles are lifted and rolled across open fields. Trees are stripped to bare trunks. Heavy machinery is tossed aside like toys. Inside the vortex, multiple smaller suction vortices spin around the core. Each one carries its own intense wind field. When they strike buildings directly, the destruction becomes absolute. Entire homes begin to disappear beneath the rotating cloud of debris, and the tornado continues drifting slowly through Double Creek Estates. Relentless, unhurried. staying over the same ground far longer than any tornado should. For the people trapped beneath it, every second feels endless. The roar does not fade. The wind does not weaken. It keeps turning. Minute after minute, the storm refuses to move on. Instead, it tightens, widens, and continues tearing apart everything beneath it. By the time the circulation reaches the center of the neighborhood, the destruction is already catastrophic. By the time the Jarrell Tornado reaches the heart of Double Creek Estates, the storm has grown into a massive wedge. From the ground, the sky looks like a wall of spinning dirt and debris. The funnel itself is almost hidden inside the cloud of destruction. Residents who had only minutes of warning rush for shelter. Some climb into bathtubs, others hide in interior closets. A few manage to reach underground storm shelters. But many homes in the neighborhood are mobile houses or lightly built structures sitting on open land. They were never designed to withstand a violent tornado. When the circulation moves over the first row of houses, the destruction begins immediately. Roofs peel away, windows shatter, walls collapse inward as the pressure inside the tornado drops. But the storm does not pass. The massive circulation continues rotating directly over the same streets. Minute after minute, debris fills the air so densely that daylight begins to fade beneath the storm. Wooden boards spin like blades. Metal siding twists through the vortex. Household objects are ripped from homes and carried upward. Inside the tornado, suction vortices tear across the neighborhood. These smaller whirlwinds carve narrow paths of extreme damage. When one passes directly over a house, the building can disappear in seconds. Entire structures are lifted from their foundations. Pieces of homes spiral thousands of feet into the storm. Vehicles are thrown across fields or crushed beneath falling debris. The sound is overwhelming. Survivors later describe a roar louder than anything they had ever heard. A deep, grinding thunder that does not stop. The tornado continues crawling through the neighborhood. Because it is moving so slowly, each home remains inside the circulation far longer than usual. Instead of seconds, some structures endure nearly a full minute of violent winds. That extra time allows the tornado to tear buildings apart completely. Homes reduced to scattered debris, streets buried beneath shattered lumber and twisted metal. And in some places, even the grass has been ripped from the ground. Rescue teams arriving later will struggle to identify where houses once stood. The tornado has not only destroyed structures, it has stripped the land itself. Rescue teams arriving later will struggle to identify where houses once stood. After the tornado lifts, the damage investigators who arrive in Jarrell see something they rarely encounter. Entire neighborhoods are gone. Not damaged, not partially destroyed, gone. In some places, homes have been completely removed from their foundations. Only the bare concrete slabs remain. Debris that once formed entire houses is scattered across fields miles away. But the investigators notice something even more unusual. The ground itself has been torn apart. Grass is missing. Topsoil has been scraped away. In certain areas, the earth looks as if it has been sandblasted. It happens only in the most violent tornadoes. Inside the Jarrell Tornado, the slow movement allowed the winds to remain over the same patch of land for an extended period of time. Instead of sweeping past quickly, the rotating vortex continued grinding against the surface. Powerful suction vortices spun inside the larger circulation, acting like drills against the earth. When those smaller vortices passed across homes, they did more than tear off roofs. They shredded the entire structure. Wood framing was splintered into fragments. Metal appliances were twisted beyond recognition. Vehicles were thrown and crushed. Even heavy objects embedded in the ground were ripped free. Some damage indicators suggested winds well over 250 miles per hour. But it wasn't just wind speed that made Jarrell so destructive. The tornado stayed over certain houses for nearly a full minute. That allowed the violent circulation to dismantle structures piece by piece. Investigators later concluded that the slow movement of the tornado made the damage far worse than a faster storm with similar winds. In some parts of Double Creek Estates, there was almost nothing left to identify. Foundations, scattered debris, bare soil, a neighborhood erased by a tornado that refused to move. Survey teams documented one of the most extreme damage patterns ever recorded in a tornado. Entire homes were swept clean from their slabs. Heavy vehicles were mangled and thrown long distances. Large trees were stripped and uprooted. The landscape itself had been changed. Jarrell became a case study in how violent tornadoes can interact with the ground when they slow down. Jarrell became a case study in how violent tornadoes can interact with the ground when they slow down. So yeah, this was all. What do you think about it? Comment and subscribe for more cases. See you guys. If this case surprised you, leave a like. Leave your comment and tell us what you think.